They tell you it is for the spectacle. The instructors at the Schola Progenium, with their scarred faces and their absolute certainty, explain that a commissar must inspire awe in equal measure to fear. They tell you the plasma pistol's distinctive whine, the way it bathes everything in killing light, the sheer excess of its destructive power compared to a simple bolt or las round. These things brand themselves into the memories of soldiers who witness an execution. They tell you that guardsmen who have seen a coward unmade by plasma will never forget the lesson. They tell you many things at the Schola, and most of them are lies dressed in the Emperor's truth. I believed those lies for 7 years. 7 years of drawing that weapon, of feeling its heat against my palm even through the grip's thermal dampening, of watching men come apart in ways that haunted my sleep. 7 years before I understood the real reason we carry these beautiful, treacherous instruments. The reason no commissar speaks aloud, though we all know it in our bones. My name is Aldrich Vance. I have served the commissariat for 31 years across 14 campaigns, 6 worlds, and more regiments than I care to count. I have executed 417 imperial servants, guardsmen, officers, even 2 other commissars who failed in their duty. I know the exact number because I recorded each one in a leather journal that I have carried since my first posting, a habit my mentor insisted upon. He said the numbers would matter someday. He was right, though not in the way he intended. The journal sits open before me now, its pages yellowed with age and stained with substances I prefer not to examine too closely. Outside my quarters, I can hear the rumble of the transport ship's engines as we translate through the warp toward another war zone, another regiment that will learn to fear me before they learn to fear the enemy. My plasma pistol rests beside the journal, its casing warm to the touch even in standby mode. It has been my companion longer than any human being. It has never betrayed me, though it has tried to kill me twice. I find I cannot fault it for that. The warmth is the first thing you notice about a plasma pistol. Other weapons are cold, lifeless tools that wait patiently for their moment of violence. A plasma pistol breathes. The containment coils cycle constantly, keeping the hydrogen fuel in its excited state, ready to flash into sun-hot destruction at the squeeze of a trigger. Press your hand against the casing, and you will feel it pulse like a heartbeat. The instructors called this a design flaw, a consequence of the ancient technology's imperfection. They were wrong about that too. The warmth is a reminder. It tells you that you are holding something alive, something dangerous, something that could consume you as easily as your target. I received my plasma pistol on the day of my commissioning, presented by Lord Commissar Harkin himself in a ceremony I can still recall with perfect clarity. The weight of it surprised me, heavier than the training replicas, substantial in a way that felt like destiny settling into my palm. Harkin's words were the standard benediction, the Emperor's light, the sacred duty, the price of cowardice. But his eyes told a different story. When he pressed the weapon into my hands, his gaze held something I would not recognize until years later: pity. "Guard it well," he said, and I thought he meant the pistol. Now I understand he was speaking to the pistol about me. My first posting was the Cadian 4012th, a regiment already broken by 3 years of grinding warfare against the greenskin menace on a world whose name I have deliberately forgotten. They had lost 2 commissars before me, one to an orc bullet, one to a training accident that fooled no one. The men watched me disembark from the shuttle with the flat, exhausted eyes of those who have seen too much to feel fear. They had passed through terror into something worse: resignation. I was 23 years old. I had graduated 3rd in my class at the Schola. I had memorized every regulation, every precedent, every approved method of maintaining discipline. I believed, with the absolute conviction of youth, that I would be different. That I would inspire my regiment through example rather than execution. That the plasma pistol would remain holstered, a symbol rather than a tool. The warmth against my thigh called me a liar before I ever drew the weapon. 6 days into my posting, I killed my first man. His name was Corporal Dran Hollis, a decade my senior, father of 3 daughters he would never see again. He had been found asleep at his sentry post during an alert, and the regulations were clear: dereliction of duty during combat operations. Summary execution at the commissar's discretion. I remember the way he looked at me when they dragged him before my judgment. Not pleading, he was too tired for that. Not angry, not frightened, not anything I had been trained to expect. He looked at me the way a man looks at the weather. An impersonal force, neither good nor evil, simply inevitable. He had made a mistake, and the universe had a punishment for mistakes, and I was merely the instrument through which that punishment would be delivered. "I understand, sir," he said before I could speak the formal condemnation. I have no excuse. I was tired, I failed. Please just make it quick. The instructors had warned us about this. They said some men would try to manipulate us with acceptance, that we must not let their dignity soften our resolve. I drew my plasma pistol and felt its eager heat against my palm. The coils whined as I raised it, a sound like a small animal keening. Hollis did not look away. His eyes met mine, and in that moment I saw something that the scholar had never prepared me for. He knew something I did not. The plasma bolt took him in the chest. There is no clean death with such a weapon. The superheated gas converts flesh to steam, bone to powder, and what remains is a cavity of charred absence where a human being used to be. The other guardsmen stood at attention, their faces carefully blank, but I saw how their eyes tracked the pistol as I holstered it. Not me. The pistol. They had learned the lesson well. That night, in my quarters, I opened my journal and wrote a Corporal Dran Hollis. Dereliction of duty. Executed by plasma discharge, 1847 local time. First entry, I did not sleep. The warmth of the pistol seemed to radiate through its holster, through my bed, through my bones. I told myself it was my imagination. But imagination does not leave burn marks on the sheets. The Cadian 4012th was eventually relieved after 9 more months of combat. I had executed 11 men in that time, each one recorded with the same clinical precision in my journal. I had learned to keep my face stone, my voice level, my hands steady. I had learned that guardsmen do not hate their commissars. Hatred requires energy they cannot spare. They simply accept us as one more hazard in a universe full of hazards. The orcs might kill them. The enemy artillery might kill them. The commissar might kill them. All equally probable, all equally impersonal. I had also learned to recognize the warmth. It was not constant. Some days the pistol felt no different than any other holstered weapon, a weight at my hip and nothing more. But when an execution approached, when discipline had frayed, and someone would have to die to mend it, the warmth grew. The thermal dampening in the grip seemed to fade. The casing pulsed against my thigh like an eager heartbeat. I told myself this was psychology, anticipation creating phantom sensations. I told myself many things in those early years. My second posting brought me to the Mordian Iron Guard, and with them I learned what it meant to be truly feared. The Mordians prize discipline above all else. Their drill is legendary. Their parade formations works of art, their adherence to regulation almost religious. They should have been the perfect regiment for a commissar. Instead, they were my first lesson in the curse of my office. They did not need me. Their own officers maintained discipline through tradition and pride, not fear. My presence was an insult, a suggestion that their legendary resolve might somehow be insufficient. I went 8 months without drawing my plasma pistol. 8 months of watching from the outside while the regiment functioned perfectly without my intervention. 8 months of eating alone, of walking through camps where conversation died at my approach, of existing in a bubble of silence that moved with me wherever I went. The guardsmen did not hate me. They did not fear me. They simply pretended I did not exist, and somehow that was worse. The warmth never faded. If anything, it grew stronger during those months of inaction, as if the pistol resented being neglected. I would wake in the night to find my hand resting on its grip, my fingers curled around the familiar curves, though I had no memory of reaching for it. The scholar taught us about the psychological bond between a commissar and their weapon, but they presented it as something noble, a sacred trust. They did not mention that the trust might not be mutual. The breaking came during the siege of Vornis Station, when the forces of ruin struck from the void without warning. The Mordians held their ground with characteristic stoicism as the enemy poured through the breached walls, but even legendary discipline has its limits. When the screaming things came, I will not describe them. I lack the words, and some memories are best left unformed. Even the Iron Guard began to waver. Private Aldous Kren was the first to run. He threw down his lasgun and fled, screaming prayers to the Emperor that would go unanswered, and in his wake I saw the cracks spreading through the regiment's resolve. One man's cowardice can be forgiven. But cowardice is contagious, and the things coming through the breach fed on fear. I killed Kren with a plasma bolt to the back. The whine of the weapon cut through the chaos, and for a moment every eye turned to me. The charred ruin that had been a fleeing man still smoked at my feet. I raised the pistol, still hot, still eager, and I spoke the words I had been trained to speak. The Emperor's light burns brighter than your fear. The only retreat is death. They believed me, or perhaps they simply feared the pistol more than they feared the enemy. Either way, the line held. The Mordians rallied, their discipline reasserting itself like muscle memory, and together we held Vornis Station until relief arrived 3 days later. Afterward, the regiment's colonel, A stern woman named Victrix, who had never spoken to me directly before, invited me to dine with her officers. I accepted, though I knew what it meant. I had proven my worth in the only currency that mattered. I had killed one of their own, and in doing so I had saved the rest. That weapon, Colonel Victrix said as the other officers pretended not to listen. The plasma pistol. Is it true that they malfunction often? Often enough, I admitted. The coils can overheat. The containment can fail. When that happens, I did not need to finish. Everyone present had seen what plasma could do. Then why not carry something safer? A bolt pistol would serve the same purpose. I opened my mouth to give the standard answer, the spectacle, the awe, the memorable lesson, but the words died on my tongue. Instead I heard myself saying something I had never consciously thought, something that rose from the warmth at my hip like a confession long suppressed. Because it might kill me instead. The silence that followed lasted only a moment before Colonel Victrix moved the conversation to other matters. But I saw the understanding in her eyes, and I saw the same understanding reflected in the faces of her officers. They knew. Perhaps they had always known. The plasma pistol was not just a tool of execution. It was a gamble. Every time a commissar drew that weapon, they were placing their own life against the life of their target. The coils might hold, the containment might stay stable, or the whole thing might detonate in their hand and take them screaming into the Emperor's light. That night I opened my journal and wrote nothing about Aldous Kren. Instead I wrote a question. Is this why we carry them? Is this the only way we can live with what we do? I had no answer, but the warmth against my palm felt different now, less like a threat, more like an understanding. The years that followed took me across the galaxy and through more regiments than I can easily count. The Armageddon Steel Legion, where I executed a sergeant for stealing rations during a famine. The Vostroyan Firstborn, where I killed a lieutenant who had ordered his men into a suicidal charge for personal glory. The Talon Desert Raiders, the Valhallan Ice Warriors, the Katachan Jungle Fighters, each posting brought new faces, new challenges, new entries in my journal. The numbers climbed: 50 executions, 100, 200. The plasma pistol malfunctioned for the first time on execution number 212. His name was Trooper Vanis Cole, a young man from some backwater agri world whose name I never learned. He had been caught trading guard equipment to local civilians for food and companionship, a capital offense during active deployment. The evidence was incontrovertible, the sentence required, and I felt nothing but weary routine as I raised the pistol to deliver the Emperor's judgment. The whine reached its familiar pitch. I squeezed the trigger, and instead of the focused beam that should have ended Vanis Cole's life, the plasma vented sideways through a hairline crack in the containment coils. I do not remember the pain. The chirurgeons told me later that my nervous system had simply shut down, overwhelmed by input it could not process. I remember light, not the focused beam of an execution, but something broader, something that seemed to fill the entire world. I remember heat beyond anything I had experienced, heat that went beyond temperature into some realm of pure sensation. I remember thinking, very clearly, this is what they feel. Every single one of them. This is the judgment I have delivered 411 times, and now I am receiving it myself. I should have died. The plasma should have consumed my arm, my shoulder, my life. Instead, some quirk of the containment failure directed most of the energy away from my body, leaving me with burns that covered my arm from wrist to elbow but sparing my life. The chirurgeons worked for 6 hours to stabilize me, and another 3 months to repair the damage enough for basic function. The scars remain to this day, twisted, waxy tissue that no amount of treatment will fully heal. Vanis Cole was executed the following day by my adjutant using my plasma pistol. They told me he did not resist, did not speak, did not even look at the weapon that had malfunctioned. He simply stood at attention and waited for death to take him. The chirurgeons would not let me witness the execution, but I heard the distinctive whine through the Medica Bay's walls. I felt the moment of discharge in the sympathetic throb of my burned flesh. When they returned my pistol, I held it in my unmarked hand and felt its warmth with new understanding. The weapon had tried to kill me. It had come closer than any enemy, any battle, any hazard of my long career, and in failing to kill me, it had given me a gift I had not known I was seeking: absolution. The scars became a kind of credential among my fellow commissars. I met them at briefings, at transfers, at the rare gatherings where the commissariat allowed its officers to interact outside their duties. They saw the marks on my arm and they nodded, each of them, with a recognition that needed no words. Some showed me their own scars, burn marks on hands, on faces, on parts of their bodies normally hidden by uniform. One senior commissar, Lord Commissar Prin, revealed a crater of missing flesh where his left ear had once been. An overheat during his 105th execution, he said. The weapon had taken his hearing on that side but spared his life. The odds of survival decrease with each firing. He told me over glasses of amasec that neither of us truly wanted. The coils degrade, the containment weakens. Every shot brings you closer to the moment when the pistol decides you have killed enough. Why not replace the weapon? Maintain it properly. The tech priests could what? Make it safe. Prin laughed, and the sound held no humor. We are Commissars Vance. We carry plasma pistols because they might kill us. Because every execution is a gamble. Because we offer our lives alongside those we condemn. The scholar never taught us that. The scholar cannot teach what must be learned through blood. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. They tell us it is for the spectacle, for the awe, and that is true, as far as it goes. But the deeper truth is simpler and more terrible. We need the risk. Without it, we would be nothing but murderers with authority. The plasma pistol gives us the chance, small, but real, to pay for what we do. It is our confession box, our penance, our prayer. Every time we draw it, we ask the Emperor to judge us alongside our victims. I drank my amasec and said nothing, but that night, I held my pistol longer than necessary before holstering it, feeling its warmth, understanding for the first time the full nature of our compact. The campaigns continued. The executions continued. My journal filled, and I started a second, then a third. The scars on my arm ached during cold weather and burned during plasma discharges, a sympathetic pain that I came to welcome as a reminder of my mortality. I watched junior commissars receive their plasma pistols with the same nav of conviction I had once possessed, and I said nothing. The truth was not mine to share. Each of us had to find it alone, in the warmth of the grip, in the whine of the coils, in the moment when the weapon turned against us, and we discovered whether we would live or die. Some did not survive their lessons. I attended the funerals of 7 commissars who died to their own weapons during my career, overheat failures, containment breaches, simple bad luck. Their deaths were recorded as equipment malfunction and forgotten by everyone except those of us who understood. They had drawn the losing hand. The pistol had judged them. There was a strange comfort in that, a sense that justice existed even for executioners. The worst part was not the killing. The worst part was knowing that I might never be killed. I had survived 2 malfunctions by the time I reached my 30th year of service. The odds should have caught up with me. The coils on my pistol were degraded, the containment weakened by decades of use and hundreds of discharges. The tech priests who maintained our weapons told me, in their clicking mechanical voices, that my pistol was operating well beyond its safe parameters. They offered to replace it with a newer model, freshly manufactured, safe and reliable. I refused. The weapon was mine. We had an understanding. The final revelation came not on a battlefield, but in a quiet chapel on a transport ship between war zones. I had gone there seeking solitude. Commissars have few places where they can be alone with their thoughts, but even the most desperate guardsman will not intrude on another's prayer. I knelt before the altar, not praying exactly, but existing in the presence of the Emperor's image, while my mind wandered through 3 decades of blood. I was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows at the chapel's edge, and for a moment my hand went to my pistol before I recognized the uniform of a fellow commissar. She was young, barely out of the schola, judging by the unmarked leather of her holster and the nervous energy in her movements. Her plasma pistol was new, its casing pristine and unmarred by use or malfunction. "Lord Commissar Vance," she said, and her voice trembled slightly. "I apologize for the intrusion. I did not know you were at ease." I gestured to the space beside me. "The Emperor's chapel has room for all who seek him." She knelt, but I could feel her attention on me rather than the altar. After a long moment, she spoke again, the words tumbling out as if they had been building pressure for months. "How do you do it? How do you continue? I've read your record, 412 executions. How do you live with that weight?" I could have given her the scholar answers. Duty, faith, the necessity of discipline. I could have repeated the lies I had been told and left her to find the truth on her own, as every commissar must. But something in her voice, the desperation, the genuine need to understand, reminded me of myself at her age, holding my new pistol and believing I would be different. "How many have you killed?" I asked. 3. The word came out like a confession. 3 in 8 months. The last one, he was younger than me. He cried for his mother. I remembered my own 3rd execution, a young woman who had hidden during a charge, paralyzed by fear rather than cowardice. She had not cried, but she had looked at me with such bewilderment, such incomprehension that the universe could be so cruel. I had carried her face for years before it faded into the blur of all the others. "Your pistol," I said. "Take it out. Hold it." She obeyed, though confusion flickered across her features. The plasma pistol gleamed in the chapel's dim light, its coils humming softly, its warmth visible as a faint shimmer in the air around the casing. "Feel the heat." Yes, the instructor said it was a design flaw. The instructors say many things. I drew my own pistol, its surface scarred and discolored from decades of use and 2 near-fatal malfunctions. "Put your hand on the casing. Feel how it pulses." She did, and I saw her eyes widen as she registered what I had learned so long ago. The weapon lived. It waited. "Every time you draw this pistol," I said, "you are gambling with your own life. The coils can fail, the containment can breach, the hydrogen plasma can consume you as easily as your target. The odds are small, but they are real, and that is why we carry these weapons. Because they might kill us, because they might judge us." I holstered my pistol, feeling its warmth settle against my hip like an old friend. We are executioners. We kill men and women who might have been heroes if circumstances had been different. We end lives that the Emperor could have used, if they had been stronger or luckier or simply standing in a different place at the wrong moment. That is our duty, and we must bear it. But the plasma pistol gives us something else, a chance. A possibility that the universe will decide we have killed enough, that our judgment has finally become too corrupt to continue. Every execution is a prayer, asking the Emperor if we are still worthy to serve, and if the pistol kills us, that is our answer. That is our absolution. The young commissar stared at her weapon for a long time. I watched emotions play across her face, fear, understanding. Something that might have been hope. Finally she looked up at me, and in her eyes I saw the same recognition I had seen in Colonel Victrix's eyes, in Lord Commissar Prin's eyes, in the eyes of every commissar who had survived long enough to understand. The instructors never told us this. The instructors cannot. I rose, my knees protesting the cold stone floor. This truth must be earned, not taught. But now you know. Carry your pistol with that knowledge. Accept the risk not as a burden, but as a gift. And when the day comes that the weapon turns against you, face it without fear. You will have paid for your duty in the only currency the universe accepts. I left her kneeling in the chapel, her plasma pistol cradled in her hands like a sacred relic. Perhaps she would understand. Perhaps the knowledge would destroy her. Every commissar walks that edge, and not all of us survived the crossing. The transport delivered me to my new posting 3 weeks later, the Krieg 47th Siege Regiment, veterans of a dozen grinding attritional campaigns. They greeted me with the blank masks that were standard issue on their homeworld, their eyes invisible behind rebreather lenses, their emotions buried beneath layers of doctrine and duty. They did not fear me. They did not hate me. They simply filed my existence alongside all the other administrative details of their service and waited for orders. I did not expect to use my plasma pistol often among the Krieg. Their discipline was legendary, their commitment to duty absolute. They would march into certain death without hesitation, would hold positions until the last soldier fell, would accept any sacrifice for the Imperium without complaint. They did not need a commissar's motivation. They were already dead in all the ways that mattered. They were simply waiting for their bodies to receive the message. But even the death corpse has its breaking points. The campaign on Nexus Prime lasted 18 months before the cracks began to show. We were fighting forces of ruin. I will not name their allegiance, some words have power, in a hive city that had long since died around us. The environment was toxic, the enemy relentless, the casualties mounting faster than our supply lines could replace them. Even the Krieg began to wear thin, their legendary endurance finally meeting an opponent it could not outlast. Private 742 Kappa was not a coward. His record showed nothing but exemplary service, a decade of campaigns without a single disciplinary notation. He had volunteered for Forlorn Hopes, had held positions alone when his squad was destroyed, had earned 3 commendations for valor that he had never collected because he saw no value in recognition. He was by every measure exactly what the Imperium wanted its soldiers to be. He broke anyway. I found him in a ruined chapel, his rebreather removed, his face exposed to the toxic air. He was not trying to die, or perhaps he was, but not quickly. He was simply sitting in the rubble, looking up at a shattered window where colored glass had once depicted the Emperor's ascension, and breathing poison with every slow inhalation. Private. I kept my voice neutral. You are in violation of environmental protocols. He looked at me, and I saw something I had never seen in a Krieg soldier's eyes: emotion. Not fear, not despair, but something more terrible, weariness, a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of rest could cure. I apologize, Commissar. His voice was hoarse, damaged by the toxic air. I will accept my punishment. I drew my plasma pistol. The familiar warmth pulsed against my palm, the coils humming their eager song. Private 742, Kappa watched the weapon without flinching, without pleading, without any reaction at all. He had accepted his death years ago. This was simply the universe finally delivering on its promise. You understand that environmental violations during active combat operations carry the penalty of summary execution. I understand, Commissar. You have nothing to say in your defense. He considered the question with the same detachment he might have shown a tactical problem. I am tired, he said finally. I have been tired for 10 years. I have killed until killing has no meaning. I have survived until survival feels like punishment. I looked up at that window and I thought that the Emperor might be more merciful than the Imperium. I was wrong, of course. The Emperor's mercy is the Imperium's purpose. But for a moment I wanted to believe otherwise. The plasma pistol hummed against my palm. I felt its warmth, felt the slight instability in the containment coils that marked its age and wear. 738 discharges since my last maintenance cycle. The tech priest said it could fail at any time. They said every firing was a risk. They did not understand that the risk was the point. I am going to kill you now, I said. Your death will be recorded as environmental violation during combat operations. Your family, if you have one, will receive no notification. Your service record will be marked as dishonorable. Everything you have done for the Imperium will be overshadowed by this moment of weakness. I understand. Commissar, do you have any final words? Private 742 Kappa looked at me for a long moment, and something shifted in his exhausted eyes. Not hope, he was beyond hope, but something like understanding, as if he had finally recognized what I was offering him. Tell me something, Commissar, your weapon. Does it ever feel warm to you? I should not have answered. The question was irrelevant to his execution, a delay that served no purpose. But something in his voice, the genuine curiosity, the search for meaning in his final moments, reminded me of another young soldier who had asked me the same question years ago. Corporal Dran Hollis, my first execution, who had looked at me with the eyes of a man who knew something I did not. Yes, I said. It feels warm. Then you understand. His lips curved into what might have been a smile beneath the chemical burns. You carry your own judgment with you. Every time you draw that weapon, you accept the possibility that it will take you instead. That is a kind of mercy I never found. You would call it mercy. I would call it hope. The hope that the universe might decide you have done enough. That your death might mean something beyond the simple mathematics of attrition. He laughed, and the sound rattled in his damaged lungs. We Krieg, we die for duty, but we never die for ourselves. There is no chance in our deaths, no gamble, no prayer. We simply end when the numbers say we must end. Your pistol offers something more, the possibility of judgment, of redemption, of an ending that is chosen rather than assigned. The warmth in my palm intensified. I felt the coils cycling faster, the containment straining against pressures it was never designed to hold. My weapon was old, worn, unreliable. Every firing was a prayer. Every execution was a question. I am going to ask the Emperor a question now, I said. I am going to ask him whether your death or mine better serves his purpose. The plasma will decide. Private 742 Copper closed his eyes. Then let us both receive our answer. I fired. The plasma bolt struck him center mass, converting his body to steam and ash in the space between heartbeats. The characteristic whine faded into silence, and I stood alone in the ruined chapel, my pistol still warm in my grip, my heart still beating in my chest. The Emperor had answered. Private 742 Kappa's service was complete, mine was not. I holstered my weapon and walked out of the chapel without looking back. The toxic air burned my lungs. I had been breathing it too. I realized, my rebreather forgotten in the intensity of the moment, but I welcomed the pain. It reminded me that I was still alive, still carrying my judgment at my hip, still waiting for the day when the warmth would turn against me and deliver the absolution I had earned through 418 executions. The campaign ended 3 months later in Pyrrhic victory. The Hive City was reclaimed, though nothing living remained to inhabit it. The Krieg 47th was reduced to 112 soldiers from an original strength of 3,000. I had executed 19 of them over the course of the campaign, a low number by historical standards. The Krieg do not break easily, and when they break completely. I carried the memories of each execution in my journal, in my scars, in the ever-present warmth of my plasma pistol. I carried Private 742 Kappa's words too, his understanding of what my weapon truly represented. He had been right in the end. The plasma pistol was hope. The plasma pistol was prayer. The plasma pistol was the only mercy a commissar could offer themselves in a universe that had none to spare. Now I sit in my quarters on another transport ship, bound for another war zone, preparing to join another regiment that will fear my arrival. My journal lies open to the final page, the entries cramped together as I run out of space for the dead. My plasma pistol rests beside it, its warmth a comfort rather than a threat. 431 executions. That is my current count. 431 lives ended by the weapon in my hand, each one a prayer, each one a gamble, each one a question asked of the Emperor and answered in fire. The pistol's coils are degraded past any reasonable safety margin. The containment shows stress fractures visible to the naked eye. The tech priests have begged me to surrender it for replacement, and I have refused them every time. This weapon knows me, it knows my sins, it knows the weight I carry and the absolution I seek. When the day comes that it finally fails, when the coils breach and the plasma consumes my arm, my body, my life, I will accept that judgment with the same calm I have demanded from every soldier I have executed. It will be the only fair death a commissar can receive. Until that day I will continue to draw this beautiful, terrible instrument. I will continue to kill for the Emperor, and I will continue to ask him, with every pull of the trigger, whether I have killed enough. The warmth against my palm will remind me of my mortality. The whine of the coils will sing my questions into the void, and somewhere, in the infinite calculus of the Imperium, my account will grow ever larger, waiting for the moment of final reckoning. They tell you it is for the spectacle. The instructors at the Schola Progenium, with their scarred faces and their absolute certainty, explain that a commissar must inspire awe. They are not wrong, but they are not right either. The truth is simpler and more terrible. We carry plasma pistols because they might kill us. We carry them because we need the risk. We carry them because, in a universe that offers no mercy, the chance of our own destruction is the only absolution we can find. I will carry mine until it kills me, or until I have killed enough to finally deserve its judgment. The warmth against my palm tells me that day is coming. It has been coming since my first execution, since Corporal Dran Hollis looked at me with knowing eyes, since the weapon was pressed into my hands by a Lord Commissar who pitied what I would become. Now I understand his pity. Now I understand everything. The plasma pistol is not a weapon, it is a prayer, and every commissar who carries one is asking the same question, with every execution, with every discharge, with every moment of warmth against their palm, have I done enough? Is my judgment corrupt? Does the Emperor still accept my service? The weapon will answer eventually. For some of us it already has. For me the question remains open, the prayer unfinished, the warmth ever present. I am still waiting for my absolution, and when it comes I will accept it with gratitude.